Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our Friday feature where we get a chance to spotlight one of our amazing members. I'm super excited today to be here with NPN Board President and long time member of NPN, Gigi Khonyongwa-Fernandez. She is the mother of, is it 7 angel babies? Is that
4.
correct? 4. Okay, I don't know how I had 7. 4 angel babies, a surviving twin who was born at 24 weeks and is now 16 years old.
Yes.
Gigi is clinical by training as an OT. She is also a professional and trauma-informed coach. And oh my gosh, I know I'm leaving out like half of your bio.
Don't worry.
But she is, a DE&I leader in our space for us and has just always been one of those people that I go to when I'm feeling depleted. It's,
Oh,
and sometimes, Gigi, it's like you just know when I need it, and I'll get, a message from you. And it's just the way you've always been from the day I've met you. Talking to you is like, being hugged by you. And I just appreciate that so
oh,
much. So thank you so much. I'm really excited. We've been doing the Let's Talk About Race monthly discussions
mhm.
where, which have been really wonderful discussions, but we haven't really ever talked about you and how you got started in this space, because you weren't always a NICU parent leader. We always say it's not education that gets you to this place, it's life. So
Exactly. Mhm.
let's just jump off right there and tell me, how did your personal experience with loss um, and extreme prematurity um, transform you?
Oof. How long do we have? I know. um, I think, you know that saying, life happens when you're making plans,
Yes.
or God laughs at you when you're making your plans. And I think,
Mhm.
like all of us, when we went through this whole um, pregnancy, fertility sort of journey, you have one outcome in your mind, and
Mhm.
it does not include the NICU. And so
Right.
it was, I mean, our journey started, we had, which I know now was a form of infertility, which I didn't know back then.
Mhm.
But I didn't have a problem conceiving, I had a problem maintaining pregnancy.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so we lost several within the third and fourth month. Um,
Mhm.
and and no one could tell me why, and that was frustrating. I kept saying, even if the outcome was the same, if I knew
Right.
what was causing it, I don't know, for some
Mhm.
weird reason that would make it, I guess, better. Um,
Well, there's power, I think, in being able to
in all
name
this.
something, you
Exactly,
know?
exactly. And it there's power, and it's, in some ways it kind of lessens the fear, in a
Mhm.
slight, this
Mhm.
slightly different way. But as you said,
Right.
I'm a clinician by background, so I started off as actually as an engineer and hated it, and and
Okay,
then
I didn't even ever know
you
that
didn't
about
know
you.
that.
I can't
Well,
imagine you as an engineer.
oh no, oh no, I would have been the worst engineer. And actually, so uh, I didn't finish. I went to my third year and changed majors and universities. And people thought I was weird because they thought, you crazy, you have one more year. But I think that's a part of my personality. You have to listen to your gut, and I think that's
Mhm.
been
Mhm.
something that's always been a part of who I am. And so I just knew that just wasn't me. Um,
Yep.
and went into healthcare. Really, initially wanted to be an OBGYN, but then I realized babies come whenever they want to come. I didn't know that was going to happen in my life. And so I just thought, what I liked about OT was the holistic nature. And I've always
Mm.
been
Yep.
attracted to that. We can't compartmentalize ourselves. We can't, chop up
No.
our lives and our journeys, and all of everything we experience is a part of our story. And I really like
Yeah.
the holisticness of OT, and I specialized in neurology because I was fascinated by the
Mhm.
brain and spinal cord and how they work. And so that's what I
Right.
was doing. And I was working at that time. I'm originally from the US, but I live in the UK. And so at that time I was working here in a neuro unit in London, and it was helping to start up a neuro unit here. Everything was fine. I was actually in the middle of my I was getting my master's in London School of Economics and Political Science in health, population, and society. So I was kind of looking at health inequalities, how we show up in, how they show up in various parts of healthcare systems, et cetera, et cetera. And I was expecting at that time twins. And so I thought, I'll just keep doing, and I was rolling with it,
Right.
rolling with
Yeah.
it.
Right.
And then I was I did my sort of 23-week check. You're fine, your baby's fine, everything's fine. And then went back, and I was actually in the middle of writing my dissertation, and when my waters broke, and I thought, am I incontinent? Like, that was what my initial sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're not expecting
I'm
it.
not expecting it because I was 23, 5. And so, needless to say, as many people that are listening to this, you are propelled totally unprepared into this very abnormal world. Before NICU, it was all this stuff about, okay, we're going to give you, we're going to give you this, the what do you call it? For the lung development, I can't even think now.
The steroids,
yeah, for the lung development. And it was just, I remember, just it felt like I was in a twilight zone. And I just, and I'm a person who's always kind of looked at the glass half full and like, what can I learn from this? There's something positive in this. There was absolutely nothing I could glean from. And so that was a very harrowing time. I mean, we were in the NICU for almost 6 months, 1 week shy of 6 months. In that time, 2 became 1. And it was a weird time because you are focusing on this one baby who you actually feel so, in some ways, far removed, but also close, because you're kind of, and then we were quite alone because we were in a different country. My husband's not from this country either. So, he's from Spain, I'm from the US, and we were in London. And so we were very isolated as far as family, but we also had really good friends, and that was really positive. But anyway, to get back to your query about what happened, that was such a weird experience. But in that time, we became very close to our clinical team, and our neonatologists came very close to, the other parents that were experiencing the same thing with us. And I always think about, how can I be a part of the solution? I saw so many issues happening within that space. And some things were really good and some things were not good at all. And I kept asking, okay, if I can get through this, I want to help in some way. I didn't even know what that meant. I just knew I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted the experience that people were having, and inequalities that I was seeing, and just the communication that was not really good. I just wanted to improve that. And I found that I thought that I had a voice, but for a long time, my voice was totally gone. And then when I found it, I didn't even know what to say. So I knew at that point, I just knew that there was something that I could do within that space. I just at that point didn't know what. But then sort of post then, I was also transitioning with, do I want to continue to be in clinical care? And which answer was no. And then I was doing also healthcare management, and I didn't necessarily want to be there as well. But I always felt you could use those skills, and they're transferable skills. And so I trained to be a professional coach. And all of this was kind of happening like slightly before our NICU experience.
Okay.
After the NICU experience, which continues on to this day, because the effects
16 years later,
16
absolutely.
years later, exactly. And for those of you who don't know, I know our son developed severe ROP, retinopathy prematurity, that didn't respond to treatment. So he's severely sight impaired, and he's legally blind with so he's a braille reader. So that was a whole different world. And so I guess where I am now, that all of that and all of the kind of blatant and also subtle things that occurred, I wanted to use all of my experiences, my clinical experiences, my management experiences, the NICU experience, all of that as a way to make a difference, and particularly make a difference in the people who are making the decisions within NICU, and that includes parents. And I wanted to really empower them. And so I was thinking about how could I actually do that, which is how Families Blossoming initially came to be.
Mm. I love that. And it's just it's so interesting as we do these spotlights to hear how everybody, started before they had their experience, and then how they do kind of take those skills, no matter how far removed from healthcare they might have been, and how they utilize that to make a difference for families. So,
Mhm.
so Alejandro is 16 years old. So you've been
Yes.
doing this work for a long time. And it's,
Um, yeah, I think
you know,
it's been about a good 10 years, because it took me a
mhm.
while. It took me maybe 5 or 6 years to just figure it out. I mean, well, what to actually
Sure.
be there for him, because there were so
Right.
many post NICU. There were loads of surgeries that he had to go
Mhm.
that he underwent. So I guess,
Right.
but for the next past after that, maybe 4 or 5 years, he had loads of surgeries. So I
Right.
really wasn't ready. I think when I first met you, I'd heard about you, and
Mhm.
I think when you first had your summit, and I thought, I
Mhm.
just want to connect, because I want to be a part of the solution. I don't even know what that means. But
Right. We didn't know what that was either
I know,
at the time.
um, but I knew I had something to offer.
Yes.
Um, and I needed to articulate that in my head. But
Yeah.
definitely I wanted to pivot,
Yeah.
and really use my experience of leadership and management, of project management, of development,
Mhm.
and my sort of desire and passion to see people change and see behaviors
Right.
change,
Yeah.
as a coach. And so I wanted to use that. And that's,
Yeah.
when I initially started, I created Families Blossoming,
Mhm.
which was strictly for the NICU community. And that was,
Mhm.
parents, physicians, nurses, social workers, etc. And I would, use that in various ways of, how to support them in how they
Mhm.
lead. And, and I still do that, but it's actually in the
Mhm.
past few years expanded. And so
Right.
a lot
That's
of
what I was
those,
you're getting ahead of my next
okay,
question. My next question
I'm going to slow down.
my next
Sorry.
so yeah, so you started with Families Blossoming, and then it's just kind of grown and expanded and, you know, pivoted. And, I think of, a lot of us, when we start our organizations, we're just like this little tiny seed, right?
Mhm.
And then you grow into this plant, this tree that has all kinds of different ways that you reach people. And
Yeah.
so tell me about that. Like, what drives you to keep going, or what made you kind of want to expand beyond the special needs families?
Hmm. Um, I think two things. I think, one, being asked. I was being asked to
Hmm.
do things outside of the NICU space,
Hmm.
similar things. So I would be asked to speak to other parents, or to therapists, or or
Hmm.
to or physicians, or to nurses, and
Hmm.
then I was being asked to speak to leaders in organizations, like in corporate
Hmm.
organizations, around these same
Hmm.
things, around how do you find your voice when you've lost it?
Right.
How do
Hmm.
you advocate for yourself? How do you you know, if you're from an underrepresented group, how do you speak up within a space when you're not represented? And that,
Hmm.
we've experienced that as NICU parents, being inside NICU where
Sure.
you don't have a voice.
Right.
So I
Hmm.
began to see that there were loads of threads that were
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
comparable and very
Yeah.
similar. They were overlapping. Um, and so I was being asked to do a lot of these things, and I
Hmm.
think that was a bit of an aha moment for me, because I thought, I always used to say that that you don't have to compartmentalize it, that you have so many transferable skills. And I say that all the
Mm-hmm.
time, but I was
Right.
actually beginning to see it occur. And I
Mm-hmm.
saw the need for um, compassionate leadership in organizations. I saw
Mm-hmm.
the need
Yeah.
for people to lead more healthily, which they were not.
Mm-hmm.
All of the
Yeah.
models, the leadership models that we were ascribing to were just crap. They were just not. They were just
Right.
not
Like
working. But
that hustle cut culture, right? That
that
like
hustle,
do, scale, scale,
exact,
scale, scale, scale. Yeah.
exactly. Not listening to people, not listening to
Yeah.
yourself. And I saw the need for that because people were asking for that. So it was kind of a
Yeah.
two things. And then I could see how I could use what I was doing in Families Blossoming on a wider level. And so
Mm-hmm.
so that made me that drive to always improve and always to grow and be open to
Yeah.
growing and be open to maybe
Mm-hmm.
stepping into something that's slightly different, but
Mm-hmm.
you helping more and more people was always a driving force. And again, going back to my OT days, that holistic picture, I saw
Yeah.
how there were so many connections, because really we're
Oh, for
talking about
sure.
people. We're talking about people. We're
Right.
talking about people
Yeah.
in chaos, people in
Mm-hmm.
trauma, people
Mm-hmm.
and that goes beyond. That is very much part of the NICU space, but it also goes
Mm-hmm.
beyond it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's certainly something that um, a lot of our members and these NICU parent leaders learn is how that trauma of the NICU. I mean, it's not just okay, it happened, it's done, but it really
Yes.
does change you and change the person you are and how you want to live and how you view things. And so
Mhm.
I think it's beautiful that you have developed a way to help us make sense of that because it can be very overwhelming and very confusing um, when you're
Yes.
not the person you used to be and you become the person you never imagined you would be. Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
you
And
know?
that's the power. I mean, when I work with, that's why I'm so passionate about. I never, ever, 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 ever want to leave the NICU space because
Yeah.
there's so many beautiful souls in there, and I
Mm-hmm.
always want to continue to empower NICU parent leaders.
Yeah.
And so if I do, I know how do I do that? Doing that through coaching, doing that through consulting, doing that through training, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But with that different lens. So looking at
Mm-hmm.
it as a person who's walked a journey along with you,
Mm-hmm.
where it's something special about being in a space where you don't have to explain.
Yes.
You
Yes.
don't have to.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so when someone comes in and they can share that and they can just jump off and go on,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really beautiful dance, and it's a safety there that you don't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
have in other spaces. People could
Yeah.
come go to any coach or consultant or whatever, but what I found with the
Right.
NICU space is they're attracted to me and I'm attracted to them because we have a
Mm-hmm.
shared story.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably no, I don't get everything, but probably most I get it most. I get it more than like just a general consultant that will come in or a general coach that will come in.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that's really important for me
Mm-hmm.
to stay there because it's a
Yeah.
part of my heart. Um,
Right.
and I think also, having a child who sees life differently. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I use that as well. I bring that into that
Yeah.
space because
Yep.
um, he almost forces me to pause because this is such a visual
Mm-hmm.
world. This is how we show up to people,
Mm.
how we explain things, how we communicate.
Yep.
And so I use all of that. I don't think,
Mm.
I'm a firm believer that any part of your story can be a part of your present and future.
Mm-hmm.
And so you bring all of that to the table as needed. And
Right.
my big thing is people go away with tools and strategies they can use.
Mm-hmm.
That's I don't ever want people to always need me, no matter what. I want them
Yeah.
to be confident and empowered themselves so they can actually begin to
Right.
use and show up in a way they want to be.
Yeah. I think that's just fantastic. And I mean, you certainly have done all of that for me over the years, in an kind of unofficial capacity, but you also do a lot of advocacy and advisory work with EFC&I and
Mhm.
Glance. Um, so, you're based in London, but like you say, you've got a foot on each continent, pretty much.
Yes.
So, okay, so let's talk. Can you tell me just kind of more specifically, if someone doesn't know, okay, what does
Mhm.
a trauma-informed coach do? How
Mhm.
would that help? I think that's so interesting, and I love that you have that additional certification because, you know, we work with NICU parent leaders all the time. I mean, that's what our network is all about. It's about developing these leaders, and it's so, you know, that connection to trauma. We are people, parents who have experienced and lived through trauma. We are now, managing, leading teams of staff or volunteers who themselves also experience trauma
Yeah.
to help those who are experiencing trauma now in the exact setting where we all had our own traumas. And I mean, that can't be ignored, as a leader. So, can you just tell us a little bit about, you know, what, what specifically you do as that, trauma informed coach?
Yeah. And I'm really excited to have that that certification. That's a recent one. I
Hmm.
just got it last year. And that was again part of my search about how can I um improve myself, but also
Hmm.
really improve what I offer to the people in my space, to my clients, and
Yep.
et cetera. So, and it was a very intense course. And I think the two things that come out, your query was, what do I do within that space?
Hmm.
I think the thing with trauma, and you're right, we've all sort of experienced it, is you have to acknowledge that it's happened.
Hmm.
And you also have to acknowledge all the elements of how it's being manifested in your life are normal. And that's very, very important, because a lot of times with trauma, sometimes people say, well, you have to kind of forget about it, or put it into this space, or park it, or move on. And you can move on, but you have to actually acknowledge it. And I think um, that's a big, big, big part of it um, is owning it, really owning that this is happening. There's a lot of research around, why certain people experience trauma more, or supposedly more than others, or experience it in a more intense way. And so there's a lot of what I do is listening to their their experiences and begin to make those connections. And I always say we only look backward if it's going to move us forward. So I don't necessarily stay within what's happened in your childhood, but if there are things that are happening within your childhood, young adult, your experiences, that is causing you to show up the way that you're showing up now, and causing you to experience the trauma in that particular way, we do look at it. We look at it, but look at it as a way to what is our desire? What is your desired change, and how will it take you forward? And I always ask what, particularly if trauma is preventing you from moving forward. I always ask, one of the queries I sometimes ask is, what is it giving you? And what is it not giving you? And sometimes we don't, those are hard queries to really consider, particularly because it's been such a part of our armor. It's been a part of how we protect ourselves, protect our hearts, protect our lives. And so
Right.
the
Yep.
beauty of that trauma trajectory is providing people a space to really sit there, and to however long it takes to kind of
Hmm.
peel back those onions and put some more layers on,
Hmm.
we do.
Hmm.
but we
Yeah.
do it in a very compassionate way, and we do it and also can be quite challenging because there are queries. Part of being a coach is you're constantly inquiring, and you're constantly inquiring, and one of the reasons behind it is you want that person to find their own answers. It's very
Right.
important
Right.
for me as a coach that to not say, Keira, you must do X, Y, and Z, because
Mm-hmm.
it's coming from me and
Right.
I'm owning it and you aren't. And then when
Right.
you leave, you're gonna go, what did Gigi say again? And
Right.
really it's not about me, it's about you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's like you developing those internal resources and those answers to your queries, and those no understanding your triggers, what's triggering you, because with trauma,
Mm-hmm.
every so the same thing can affect someone totally differently. A
Oh, for
sound,
sure. Right.
a,
Yeah.
a word,
Yeah.
whatever. And so it's
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, is we actually allow people to sit in this space, but we also um really uncover what's happening in that space and
Mm-hmm.
what needs to happen to move you forward. I
Yeah.
don't know if that
Yeah.
answered or made it as clear as
Yes.
mud.
No, I think that's fantastic. Now, as we close, how can people find you and learn more about how to connect with you? What's the best way?
Ooh, ring me. That would be great. But the best way you can get in touch with me is email me. My email is
Mhm.
gigi@familiesblossoming.com. Or you could find me on Instagram, and my Instagram is your joy finder, because that's really important for me, is that you live a joy-filled life.
Mhm.
Or you can find me on LinkedIn, which is I am Gigi
All right.
Khonyongwa-Fernandez. So any of those things, and usually what I do when people reach out to me, we do have what I call a discovery session, just to check to see,
Mhm.
coaching may or may not be right for you, and that's perfectly
Right.
okay. But just we have that chat to see where they are, what they're wanting to do. Because my big thing is
Mhm.
about making sure you move from where you are now to where you want to be. And
Mhm.
then if it's something that they're wanting, then we set up a contract, and then we
Mhm.
move forward. And typically, my coaching relationships are about 3 months. And the reason we do that is
Mhm.
research has shown that it takes, on average, a minimum of 3 months to begin to see any kind of change within your life.
Mhm. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Gigi. Thank you for all that you do for families and for leaders in this space, and all you've done for me. I just appreciate your service to NICU Parent Network as well. And
Oh,
I'm
thank you
excited
so
to see
much.
where we will continue to grow together. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we'll be back with another Friday feature in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.